As a disclaimer, this video will be featuring footage from the final areas of a few Mega Man games. While no story spoilers will be shown, consider this a final warning if you care about gameplay spoilers. Thank you. This chart showcases the release of every Mega Man game from its inception in 1987 to 2022, the 35th anniversary of the franchise. While the way we count how many Mega Man games there are can be argued amongst fans, it's safe to assume there are over 100 Mega Man games released in the first 35 years. However, if you notice, this chart is shaped like a bell curve, with many Mega Man games being released between 2001 and 2008, with almost none between 2011 and 2017. Longtime fans probably vividly remember the period between 2011 and 2017 as one of the most depressing times to be a Mega Man aficionado. Not a single new game, barring a fan game made official and a mobile game that was never released outside of Japan, was released in this period. For the rest of the video, this will be known as the Dark Ages of the franchise. It took until 2015's Mega Man Legacy Collection, a compilation of the first 6 NES games, for the, at the time, modern consoles, to revitalize the franchise by being one of the only games in the Mega Man series to sell over 1 million units for a glimmer of hope. But how did this happen? How did a long-running series such as this fall on such hard times? This is the story of a franchise that was oversaturated, died, and made a comeback, and a cautionary tale on how to avoid this from happening again. This is the story of the Mega Man franchise and its history. The very first Mega Man game was released on December 17, 1987 for the Famicom in Japan, and later released on the Nintendo Entertainment System on December 29, 1987. Over the course of 5 years across the NES and Game Boy, Mega Man started to build a reputation as a challenging 2D action platformer with tight controls, non-linear level design, and unforgettable graphics and music. In particular, 1988's Mega Man 2 continued to be the best-selling game in the franchise's history up until 2018's Mega Man 11, though 1990's Mega Man 3 is also one of the few to sell over 1 million units. While there were no Mega Man games released in 1989, 1991 is important for being the first year in which multiple Mega Man games were sold. Mega Man 4 was released on NES, while Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge and Mega Man 2 came out on Game Boy. This set a precedent of multiple game releases in 1 year that, at the time, was rare amongst video game series. In 1993, on top of several classic series games released such as Mega Man 6 on NES and Mega Man 4 on Game Boy, Mega Man X launched on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This introduced the second sub-series, as this video will call it, into the fold. Taking place 100 years after the original classic series, Mega Man X garnered its own fan base by emphasizing speed and exploration compared to the more straight-shooting classic series, with a darker tone to boot. Mega Man X also sold over 1 million units. In 1993 alone, we already have 4 Mega Man games released in a single year. It's also important to keep in mind that it took until 1993 for a Mega Man game to launch on the SNES, despite the console releasing 3 years earlier in Japan. The number of releases would then consistently decline until 1997, when the Mega Man Legends series was introduced on the PlayStation alongside Mega Man X4. The Legends series was a stark contrast to Classic or X, as it was instead a 3D action-adventure game with a focus on exploring one giant world instead of progressing level to level, and also signified the Mega Man series' presence on PlayStation consoles in addition to Nintendo platforms. For those keeping track, we now have 3 separate sub-series running in parallel to each other on multiple different video game platforms. If this sounds confusing to you, it should. This is part of the reason why consumers had a hard time getting into the series, because now they don't know where to start, and not everyone is fully aware of how they all connect. The original classic series would go on a bit of a hiatus after 1999's obscure Mega Man and Base 2 Challenger from the Future on the Bandai Wonder Swan, but a new series would be introduced in 2001 once more, the Mega Man Battle Network series on the Game Boy Advance. Set in an alternate timeline where the theming is about networking and the internet as opposed to robots, Battle Network is an action RPG that would spawn many sequels and go on to be one of the most successful Mega Man sub-series, with Battle Network 4 in 2003 being one of the few Mega Man games to outsell 1 million copies. Battle Network in particular has garnered its own reputation and is even considered to be an e-sport thanks to its emphasis on multiplayer battles, with N1 Grand Prix still hosting tournaments in 2005's Battle Network 6. If you've noticed though, Battle Network went from 1 to 6 in a matter of 5 years, and that gets into one of the many reasons why this series often struggled: oversaturation. This video touched on this prior, but there were a lot of Mega Man games released in a very short time frame, and some years even got multiple entries in one sub-franchise. Battle Network 1 and Battle Network 2, for example, were both released in 2001, one in March as a launch title for the Game Boy Advance, and 2 in December. This is on top of Mega Man X6 for the PlayStation and Mega Man Xtreme 2 for the Game Boy Color. If that wasn't enough, 2002 introduced a fifth series starting with Mega Man Zero, another 2D action platformer taking place 100 years after the X series. Zero was famous for focusing on melee combat and bearing many similarities to fellow Capcom franchise Devil May Cry. 2002 also saw the release of Battle Network 3. Interestingly, Battle Network 3 also introduced multiple game versions, similar to what Pokemon started. Up to this point, the most amount of Mega Man games that have been released in 1 year was 4, a feat shared by 1993 and 2001, but then 2003 happened. And this is a perfect example of what happens when you pump out too many games in too short of a time. There were 7 Mega Man games released in 1 year. If you discount the multiple versions of Battle Network 4, then that still makes 6, and over half of those were Battle Network games. That is far too much for one franchise, especially since some, like Mega Man Zero 2, were only made in 4.5 months. Games being rushed to completion are nothing new for Mega Man. 1995's Mega Man 7 was made in 3 months, for example, and that's part of the reason why this ended up happening. Regardless of critical reception, sales started to decline for each game as people started to feel fatigued, and it almost felt like the games were competing amongst themselves. Battle Network 4 was an exception due to it being one of the best-selling Mega Man games, but it can be argued that was because of Battle Network 3's widespread popularity, and these types of games, in general, hitting a fever pitch in popularity at the time. 2004 marked the return of the Classic series with Mega Man Anniversary Collection on the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox, a compilation of the first 8 Classic series games plus the 2 arcade games. This Retro Collection, as this video will call it, would become a staple, as older Mega Man games were beginning to be re-released on modern platforms. On top of this, Mega Man Zero 3 and Battle Network 5 on Game Boy Advance, X8 on PlayStation 2, and X Command Mission on both PlayStation 2 and GameCube all released, once again contributing to the problem of fatigue, but also confusion, as Capcom didn't market these games very well, meaning casual players or newcomers didn't know how the games were different. Since the DS was released in 2004, Capcom slowly started to shift to the newer hardware while wrapping up the Zero and Battle Network series on GBA. Battle Network 5 got an updated re-release on the DS in 2005, while Battle Network 6 and Zero 4 closed out the GBA games in the same year. In 2006, Capcom introduced not 1, but 2 more sub-series on DS, bringing the total up to 7. Mega Man ZX took place 200 years after Mega Man Zero, serving as the continuation of Zero's 2D action gameplay with a more open environment. Meanwhile, Mega Man Star Force took place 200 years after Battle Network and served as a successor both story and gameplay-wise, with the same action RPG gameplay with a new over-the-shoulder perspective. Star Force in particular is significant because there were 3 versions of it, Pegasus, Leo, and Dragon, which made it even more confusing for customers. This is on top of Mega Man Powered Up on PlayStation Portable, a remake of the first game, and Mega Man X Collection on PlayStation 2 and GameCube, another retro collection with X1 to X6, and 1997's racing spin-off Mega Man Battle & Chase for PlayStation 1. Phew! That's a lot of Mega Man between 2003 and 2006. To say this overwhelmed fans and critics would be an understatement, and the sales showed it too, on top of some of the games having rather mixed to negative critical reception. As a result of this, ZX only got 1 sequel, while Star Force got 2, and in general, the series was showing signs of collapse until 2010. At that point, Mega Man 10 had been released on the Wii, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360's digital stores, while Mega Man Zero Collection collected the 4 Zero games on DS. Despite 2008's Mega Man 9 showcasing the power of releasing games via online shops, like WiiWare, PlayStation Network, and Xbox Live, it was too little too late, and the series went dark after 2010. However, oversaturation and dwindling sales are not the only reason this happened. One of the other, more famous reasons has to do with the people making the games. Ever since the very first game all the way back in 1987, Keiji Inafune has been associated with the Mega Man series due to him starting as an artist in the first game before moving up the ranks to the producer role starting with 1996's Mega Man 8 and eventually as a senior corporate officer in 2006. In April 2010, he would be promoted to Capcom's global head of production, but this was short-lived. On October 29, 2010, Inafune made an announcement on his blog that would forever change the Mega Man series. He announced that he was leaving Capcom to start his life over. This would later lead to him creating his own company, Concept, and working with the renowned developers of many Mega Man games, Inti Creates, in order to make Mighty No. 9. This extremely public departure led to the Mega Man projects at Capcom to spiral out of control and for all of them to be cancelled. This includes Mega Man Universe, a classic Mega Man level editor, Maverick Hunter, a gritty first-person shooter reboot of the Mega Man X series, Mega Man Star Force 4, and perhaps most infamously Mega Man Legends 3. Leading up to Inafune's departure, he also made a push for more Western games, which not only led to games such as Dead Rising, Strider, or Bionic Commando, but also led to Inafune clashing with other Capcom senior officials. While the Western push wasn't a direct blow to Mega Man since games were made right up to his departure, it indirectly led to Capcom feeling bitter towards Inafune once he left. And it doesn't seem implausible that they canceled these games because no one else wanted to finish them, and poor management of the projects in general. Current Mega Man series producer Kazuhiro Tsuchiya would also later reveal that after Inafune's departure, no one wanted to step up to the plate and revive Mega Man because of how much of an influence Inafune had. Speaking of Tsuchiya, it was he and Koji Oda, Mega Man 11's director, who were the ones that would later bring the series back from the brink. And brought back from the brink Mega Man was. In 2018, after 8 years of near radio silence, we received Mega Man 11 on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam. According to Tsuchiya-san,
to be honest with you, when Inafune left, it was a difficult atmosphere within the company. It was difficult for somebody to step up and say, I really want to work on Mega Man. Inafune-san was definitely a brand leader for the franchise. He helped pave the way for its success, and he had a lot of brilliant ideas. That's an absolute truth. So when he left, there was a sense of emptiness, and a sense that no one was appropriate to pick up the mantle and pave a new vision for Mega Man.
As stated earlier with Inafune's departure, it was very difficult to fill the Mega Man-shaped hole in Capcom's development teams. In spite of tense relations between the fans and Capcom, the exceptionally strong sales of 2015's Mega Man Legacy Collection, over 1 million units sold, also helped showcase that the demand for Mega Man was still there. Let that sink in. Mega Man Legacy Collection, a re-release of the first 6 games, sold more than almost every other Mega Man game in series history. It's undeniable that this was a huge factor in Mega Man's return.
Mega Man Legacy Collection had 1 million sales worldwide. It was very much a way of numerically showcasing to people internally that there is a strong fan base. There are people waiting for a new Mega Man game. We were able to show that with those numbers. We wouldn't have been able to do that without our fans. I'm very thankful to our fan base.
In time, 2017's Mega Man Legacy Collection 2, 2018's Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1 and 2, and 2020's Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection would also continue to strengthen the brand, with 2018's Mega Man 11 becoming the best-selling game in the entire franchise. Mega Man 11 notably got around 1 year of development time, which probably contributed to this on top of this being the first game in 8 years. To prevent a second Dark Age of Mega Man, Kazuhiro Tsuchiya said,
we are planning on extending the Mega Man brand at least over 10 or 20 more years by giving it constant stimulation. That way, we'll be able to experience new titles alongside new players.
It seems as though Capcom is learning from their mistakes of the past and attempting to ensure the games don't compete with themselves, oversaturate the market, and confuse customers. While Keiji Inafune was a driving force behind the franchise for many years, Kazuhiro Tsuchiya seems to be learning from his mistakes, and thus, that is how the Dark Ages of Mega Man from 2011 to 2017 came to an end. At the time of this video's release, it is 2022, the 35th anniversary of the franchise, and Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection is on the horizon. Hopefully, there are many more Mega Man games to come. Fight on, Mega Man, for everlasting peace.